Friends, I am Dr. Bala Ruby, Assistant Professor in the Department of Economics. Students, in today's class, we are going to discuss about the theory of production. See, mainly there are two laws. One is law of variable proportions and another one is law of returns to scale. This law of variable proportions is otherwise known as a short-run production function. And if you see this law of returns to scale, it is considered as a long-run production function. In today's video, just I am going to discuss only about the law of variable proportions. See, law of variable proportion in the sense, it is a production function. It explains the relationship between input as well as output. That is the meaning of production function. So, in the law of variable proportion, just we are discussing about the relationship between input as well as output. At the same time, here we are keeping one factor as a variable factor and other factors are constant factors. Listen very carefully. This law of variable proportions explain the production function. What is the meaning of production function? Production function means it tells the relationship between input as well as output. So here we are going to explain about the relationship between input as well as output. At the same time, we are assuming one factor as a variable factor and other factors are constant factor. And moreover, this law of variable proportions is concerned, it is otherwise known as law of proportionality. And here there are some important assumptions. First, we assume that there are two factors. One is land and another one is labor. Like that, we are assuming there are two variables or two factors. One is land and another one is labor. And the second assumption is thus we are assuming land is a fixed factor because the supply of land always it remains constant. We cannot increase the supply of land. See, for example, the total acre of land in our world is this much. Like that, we have some data. Can we increase the supply of this land? Is it possible? No, it is not possible. So, always in the case of land, it remains constant because the supply of land is fixed. So we are assuming land is a fixed factor. Then if you see this labor, it is a variable factor. For example, you take an industry. In the industry, sometimes 10 workers are working or sometimes nearly 150 workers are working. Or if it is a big organization, mean nearly 2000 workers are working. Like that, labor as well as the labor capacity differs. So labor is a variable factor. And here we assume that technology remains constant. See, practically it is not possible because technology always change. But in this law, just we are assuming there is no changes in the technology. So these are the main assumptions in this law of variable proportions. Students, listen very carefully. If you listen the class properly, surely you have a clear understanding. So in this law of variable proportions, three stages has been clearly explained. These three stages has been clearly explained with the help of a table as well as diagram. First, let us explain this theory with the help of this table. See, I told you in the beginning of the class that it explains the relationship between input as well as output. Here, we assume only two inputs. What are they? One is land and another one is labor. So, first we put a column for land, then next column labor because we assume only two inputs or only two factors we are assuming. So, in the first column, we mention only the units of labor. And another thing is just we have assumed land is a fixed factor. So, for example, you have land nearly 10 acres. So, this 10 acres remains constant because we assume land is a fixed factor. So, continuously you write 10 acres, 10 acres, 10 acres, 10 acres like that you write. Then in the next column, units of labor. See, we are assuming it is a variable factor. So it changes from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. What is the reason for that? Initially there was no labor. After that 1 unit of labor. Then we give employment opportunity to 2 units of labor. Again we are getting employment opportunity for 3 laborers. Then 4, 5 like that we are giving importance to the labor capacity or the employment of the labor increased. Now you come to the next side. It tells the relationship between input and output. So input side over. Now you come to the output side. So in the output, there are 3 classification. One is total production, second one is average production, and the third one is marginal production. So as far as this total production is concerned, just you give an hypothetical example first. See, whenever you give any number to this total production, the relationship will be very clear. It starts from the origin. Initially, it should increase at increasing rate. Then it increases at diminishing rate. After that, it remains constant. Then finally, it declines. In such a way, you give any hypothetical example. For example, here I have given when there is no labor in the organization, total production also zero. Just so that I have given dash in the first row. Then come to the second row. When we are using the same 10 acres of land and only one labor is employed in the industry, there is a possibility of producing 20. So this 20 is the total production. Now we are employing one more labor. So instead of one labor, now we have employed 2 laborers. So when we employ these 2 units of laborers, the total production increased to 50. Again, we are giving employment opportunity to 3 units of laborers. When units of laborers increased to 3, total production also increased to 90. When units of laborer is 3, total production increased to 90. Again, when the labor is 4, total production increased to 120. Like that, when labor increases, the total production increased from 120 to 140, 140 to 150. Again, it remains constant at the same 150 and finally it declines to 140. See, you can give any example, but the relationship should be maintained. Initially, it should be increases at increasing rate. After that, it increases at diminishing rate. Then it remains constant. Finally, it declines. In such a way, you can give any number here. Now, we are going to calculate the average production. See, average production we can calculate very easily because there is a easiest formula. See, the meaning of this average production is it is the production per unit of a commodity. See, if we divide the total production and output, then we can calculate the average production. So, average production is equal to total production divided by Q. Here, total production number we have Q, it is the unit of labor. So in the first row, you put nil, that is a dash, because here when there is no labor, there is no production. Therefore, first row clearly nil only. Then you come to the second row, total production divided by labor. So total production 20 divided by 1, that is equal to 20. Again, you come to the next row, total production is 50. Units of labor 2. So 50 divided by 2 is equal to 25. Then come to the 3 units of labor. Total production is 90. Units of labor 30. So 90 divided by 3 is equal to 30. Now you come to the 4th unit of labor. Total production is 120 divided by labor 4. So 120 divided by 4 is equal to 30. Then total production is 140 divided by labor 5. Then average production is equal to 140 divided by 5, that is equal to 28, right? So if you listen the class very properly, surely you have a clear understanding. Then come to the next row. 150 divided by 6 is equal to 25. The next column, 150 divided by 7 is equal to 21.3. Again, the last one is 140 divided by 8, that is equal to 17.5. Like that, we can calculate the average production. Very, very easy. Total production divided by quantity. Here, quantity of labor. Now, you come to the next one, that is marginal production. See, marginal production in the sense it is the changes in the total production or it is the increment in the total production. Initially, the total production was 0. After that, it increased to 20. So, how much it increases? It increases from 0 to 20. So, 20 minus 0. So, what will be the result? 20. Then it increased from 20 to 50. Please listen the total production. It increased from 20 to 50. So how much it increases? 50 minus 20, that is equal to 30. Then it increased from 50 to 90. So how much it increases? From 50 to 90 means 90 minus 50 is equal to 40. Then 90 to 120. So how much it increases? 30. Again it increased from 120 to 140. So 20 units increases. So this 20 is the marginal production. Then in the next thing, it increased from 150 to 150. Actually, it remains constant. So there is no changes. 150 minus 150 is equal to 0. So the marginal production is 0. Then if you see the last row, it increased from it declines from 150 to 140. So how much it increases? Whether it increases or decreases? It decreases. So 140 minus 150, that is equal to minus 10. So if you see this marginal production, initially it increases from 20 to 30, 30 to 40. This 40 is the maximum point. Then continuously it declines from 40 to 30, 30 to 20, 10 and it reaches 0. Finally it becomes negative also. This is the characters of marginal production. See, in the beginning of the class, I told you here 3 stages has been clearly illustrated. So, first stage ends with the 4th unit of labor. Listen very carefully. First stage ends with the 4th unit of labor. How we can identify this is here when we employ this 4th unit of labor, average production also 30, marginal production also 30. So first stage end with the same average production as well as marginal production. So this is the ending of the first stage, that is 4th unit. And if you see the first stage, one more point I want to insist you, here marginal production is greater than the average production. See, if you see the result, marginal production is 30, average production is 25. Marginal production is 40, average production is 30. Like that, always this average production is lower than this marginal production in the first stage. Then you come to the second stage. In this second stage, it starts from this 5th unit of labor to the 7th unit of labor, because in the second stage end, marginal production becomes 0. At the same time, total production becomes maximum. See, this 150 is the maximum in the total production. When this total production is maximum, the marginal production becomes 0. So this is a very, very important aspect in this law of variable proportion. When total production is maximum, marginal production becomes 0. Then if you see the next one, here this total production declines from 150 to 140. So here marginal production becomes negative, that is minus 10. So this is the third stage. So these three stages has been clearly illustrated in this table. Now we can concentrate on this diagram. See here there are two panels. One is upper panel and another one is lower panel. Both in this upper panel and lower panel, x-axis measures the number of laborers. And in y-axis upper panel, we measure the total production. And in lower panel y-axis, we measure the average production as well as the marginal production. First, you draw this total production curve. It starts from the origin. So this is the total production curve. It starts from the origin. Then it increases at increasing rate. After that also it increases, but it in the decreasing rate. Then it reaches a maximum point in the G. Then it declines. Then if you see this marginal production curve, it starts from O. Then it increases. It reaches a maximum point, that is H. Then it declines. In the end of the second stage, it reaches 0. Again it becomes negative in the third stage. Then if you see this average production, initially it also starts from the origin. Continuously it increases, and in the end of the first stage, both these marginal production curve as well as average production curve intersect with each other. Then continuously this average production declines. So when you give explanation, you give separately what are the things happening in the first stage. Then in the second stage, what is happening? In the third stage, what is happening? In this way, you have to write it in your exam. Now, first we will concentrate only the first stage. In the first stage, total production increases at increasing rate. Then it increases at decreasing rate. This is the total production in the first stage. Here, this E point is considered as a point of inflection. Listen very carefully. Point of inflection, this E point. What is point of inflection means? In this point, total production stops, increases at increasing rate. At the same time, it is the starting point of total production increases at decreasing rate. So this point is known as inflection point, and correspondingly, this marginal production becomes maximum. So this corresponding point is H. Listen very carefully. This E is the inflection point. The corresponding point is H. So this H is the maximum point of the marginal production. So if you see this marginal production in the first stage, it increases from the origin. It increases, reaches a maximum point, then it declines. Then in the first stage, if you see the average production, it begins from the origin. Continuously, it increases in the first stage. And in the end of the first stage, if you see this point, both average production and marginal production intersect with each other. Then we come to the second stage. So if you see the second stage, total production, it increases at diminishing rate. In the end of the second stage, it becomes maximum. So if you see this G point, it is the maximum point of the total production. It is in the end of the second stage. Corresponding to this maximum point of total production, always this marginal production becomes 0. So this is a very important point. When total production becomes maximum, marginal production becomes 0. Then if you see the second stage, both these average production curve as well as marginal production curve continuously declines. In the end of the second stage, marginal production becomes 0. And if you see the third stage, total production declines, average production also declines. And if you see this marginal production, it becomes negative. So this is the explanation. See, I will clearly show in this PPT also. See, in this law of variable proportions, there are three stages. One is law of increasing rate. Second stage is law of diminishing returns, and the third stage is law of negative returns. In the first stage, total production increases at increasing rate till F point. After this F point, total production increases at diminishing rate. Then point F is considered as a point of inflection. Total production, average production, as well as marginal production are increasing in the first stage. Therefore, it is known as law of increasing returns. So, this is the main reason why we are saying this first stage is considered as a increasing returns. Then come to the second stage. This stage is known as diminishing returns. In this stage, total production increases at diminishing rate. Total production reaches maximum point when marginal production is 0. And if you see this average production as well as marginal production, both are declining, but it is positive. Therefore, it is known as diminishing returns. Both the average production and marginal production curves are decreasing. This is the reason why we are saying this second stage is diminishing returns. Then come to the third stage. It is known as negative returns. In the third stage, total production declines, average production also declines, but average production is near to the x-axis, but it never touches the x-axis. Important you note this also. And if you see this marginal production, it becomes negative. Therefore, this point is considered as this stage is known as negative returns because in the third stage, marginal production becomes negative. So, these three stages has been clearly explained in the law of variable proportions. So, students, in today's class, we have clearly discussed about the law of variable proportions. What is law of variable proportions? It explains the production function by keeping one factor as a variable factor and other factors are constant factor. What is the meaning of production function? It explains the relationship between input and output. So thus we are discussing the relationship between input and output here. We are assuming one factor as a variable factor and other factors are constant factor. And these three stages we have clearly discussed in this diagram as well as in the table we have clearly discussed. Thank you, students.